The president of Chad has been killed while fighting rebels on the front line just hours after winning a sixth term. Idriss Deby, who ruled over the Central African nation for more than 3 decades, breathed his last defending the sovereign nation on the battlefield, an army spokesman said today. The army said Deby had been commanding his army at the weekend as it battled against rebels who had launched a major incursion into the north of the country on election day. Deby had ruled Chad with an iron fist since 1990, but was a key ally in the West's anti-jihadist campaign in the troubled Sahel region. The army said a military council led by the late president's 37-year-old son Mahamat Idriss Deby, a 4-star general, would replace him. On Monday, the army had claimed a great victory in its battle against the rebels from neighboring Libya, saying it had killed 300 fighters, with the loss of 5 soldiers in its own ranks during 8 days of combat. Deby would have been one of the longest-serving leaders in the world, after provisional results showed him winning the April 11 election. He was a herder's son from the Zagawa ethnic group who took the classic path to power through the army, and relished the military culture. His latest election victory, with almost 80% of the vote, had never been in doubt, with a divided opposition, boycott calls, and a campaign in which demonstrations were banned or dispersed. Deby had campaigned on a promise of bringing peace and security to the region, but his pledges were undermined by the rebel incursion. The government had sought Monday to assure concerned residents that the offensive was over. There had been panic in some areas of N'Djamena on Monday after tanks were deployed along the city's main roads, an AFP journalist reported. The tanks were later withdrawn apart from a perimeter around the president's office, which is under heavy security during normal times. The establishment of a security deployment in certain areas of the capital seems to have been misunderstood, government spokesman Sheriff Mahamat Zine had said on Twitter on Monday. There is no particular threat to fear. However, the U.S. Embassy in N'Djamena had on Saturday ordered non-essential personnel to leave the country, warning of possible violence in the capital. Britain also urged its nationals to leave. France's embassy said in an advisory to its nationals in Chad that the deployment was a precaution and there was no specific threat to the capital. The rebel raid in the provinces of Tibesti and Kanem was carried out by the Front for Change and Concord in Chad, FAT, based in Libya. The group has a non-aggression pact with Khalifa Haftar, a military strongman who controls much of Libya's east. FAT, a group mainly made up of the Saharan Goran people, said in a statement Sunday that it had liberated the Kanem region. Such claims in remote desert combat zones are difficult to verify. Tibesti Mountains near the Libyan frontier frequently see fighting between rebels and the army, as well as in the northeast bordering Sudan. French airstrikes were needed to stop an incursion there in February 2019. In February 2008, a rebel assault reached the gates of the presidential palace before being pushed back with French backing. The son of a herder who was backed by France in his fight against Islamist insurgents, Idriss Deby, who was on course for a sixth term as Chad's president before he died from injuries sustained in battle, had carved out a reputation as the West's stalwart ally in the Sahel despite accusations of authoritarianism. The 68-year-old son of a herder would have been one of the longest-serving leaders in the world after provisional results showed him winning re-election this week. But his shock death cut his 30-year political career short and will likely throw Chadian politics into disarray. He died from injuries sustained while fighting rebels this weekend in the country's restive north, the army said Tuesday. His death comes after elections this month that were marred by a rebel offensive launched in the north on Election Day. The army said Monday it had killed 300 rebels and quashed the offensive. Deby's long rule in the region's brutal politics has made him a reliable figure in the French-led campaign against jihadist insurgents in the Sahel. Deby is welcomed to the Élysée Palace by French President François Mitterrand February 12, 1991. Deby, from the Zaghawa ethnic group, took the classic path to power through the army and relished the military culture. Last August, the National Assembly named him Field Marshal, the first in Chad's history, after he led an offensive against jihadists who had killed nearly 100 troops at a base in the west of the country. Dressed in a dark blue silk cape embroidered with oak leaves and clutching a baton, Deby dedicated the tribute to all my brothers in arms. As a young man, Deby enrolled at the Officers' Academy in the capital N'Djamena, before heading to France, where he trained as a pilot. He returned in 1979 to a country in the grip of feuding warlords. Deby hitched his star to Hissène Habre and was rewarded with the post of army chief after Habre came to power in 1982, ousting Gikani Wedai. In the following years, Deby distinguished himself fighting Libyan-backed rebels over mountainous territory in the north of the country. But in 1989, he fell out with his increasingly paranoid boss, who accused him of plotting a coup. Deby fled to Sudan, where he assembled an armed rebel group, the Patriotic Salvation Movement, which rolled into N'Djamena unopposed in December 1990. In 1996, 6 years after he seized power and ushered in democracy, Deby was elected head of state in Chad's first multi-party vote. He won again in succeeding elections. The main opposition withdrew its participation in 2006 and 2011, backed by a change to the constitution enabling the former soldier to renew his term, and the elections in 2015 were marked by accusations of fraud. Deby was solidly backed by former colonial power France, which in 2008 and in 2019 used military force to help defeat rebels who tried to oust him. We safeguarded an absolutely major ally in the struggle against terrorism in the Sahel, French Defense Minister Florence Parly told Parliament in 2019. Deby supported French intervention in northern Mali in 2013 to repel jihadists, and the following year stepped in to end chaos in the Central African Republic. In 2015, Deby launched a regional offensive in Cameroon, Nigeria, and Niger against Nigeria-based Boko Haram jihadists, dubbing the Islamic State affiliate a horde of crazies and drug addicts. One of Deby's political rivals, Sali Kizabo, had protested against France's backing and urged the world to recognize the regime's dictatorial nature. Deby's power base, the army, comprises mainly troops from the president's Sagawa ethnic group and is commanded by loyalists. It is considered one of the best in Sahel. According to the International Crisis Group think tank, defense spending accounts for between 30 and 40% of Chad's annual budget. In 2018, Deby scrapped the position of Prime Minister to assume full executive authority. Everything is centralized around the presidency. He uses all the weapons of absolute power while bullying society, said Roland Marchal at the Center of International Research at the Sciences Po School in Paris, speaking before Deby's death. Marchal said Deby had a reputation for a hot temper and notorious mood swings, although close aides said he had great listening ability and analytical skills. Deby was being accused of iron-fisted rule during his long reign. Banned opposition demonstrations, arbitrary arrests and severed access to social networks raised regular objections from human rights groups. Another common complaint is that Deby has named relatives and cronies to key positions and failed to address the poverty that afflicts many of Chad's 13 million people despite oil wealth.